Hello, aspiring developer. I want to show you the primitives we talked about previously inside of SmartSuite, and also the specializations of each of those primitives that exists in SmartSuite. Because all the fields inside of SmartSuite are essentially one of those primitives, or a combination of the primitives that we discussed. So let's hop into it. Just straight into it. I've got this NoCode teaching solution set up for me, so I can just show you different field types. Now you can think of a field as a column in an Excel spreadsheet. And the first one that they have here inside of the solution when you create your first project inside of SmartSuite is this title. And the title is just straight up a string. If we hop back over to here and we just take a look at our data structures, again, I said that the string was the most commonly used one. And that is going to continue to be the case, right? String, just text in general, is pretty much everywhere. All of these, text, string, 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 all of these are strings. And so the title is a string. In SmartSuite, they call it a text field because it's a column of text values. But you can also have a text area, which is essentially saying this is multiple lines, so add text that can span multiple lines. And so this is just a string that's longer, right? The next field that we have is the number. Right? So the number has optional formatting, and you can change its precision so that it can be just an integer or it can be a float. Right? So we can let it have decimal places, or we can just say, nope, this is a whole number. And we don't want it to go anywhere beyond. We don't want it to have any decimal place. So we'll just add that number field in there, boom. So we have the number slider as well, so we can click and drag, and it's basically a number that's bounded to a range from 0 to 100, 0 to 100%, which is right here. There's a percent field, right? And this is just a float, or an integer, a number between 0 and 100. You also have currency, which is just a specialized version of an integer. You just slap a $sign at the beginning of it, and it's just an integer. The last one is the yes, no. This is the checkbox, right? The Boolean. It's like yes, no, yay, nay, true or false. This is what that is. And you can change the format. You can add different images to this. So you can make it a heart. I like hearts. So we have this field, and now we have a column of yes and no. So if I add a record and say this record is for stripping long, and you know, I'm level 28, and yes, I guess I am married. I don't even, we can change this field name to be true, like yes or no, I am married, right? And so just wanted to show you what each of these fields looks like from the primitive standpoint. It's like it's necessary to understand what these are, otherwise you won't necessarily know how to use them. So just continuing on, we have our single select, and this is just a more complex version of a string. We have a series of strings, and we're just selecting the one we want to pop up in this field. So say choice 1, just like on a test, choice 2, choice 3. We can add this field. You can change the colors that are associated with it, but those pop up, and they fill in value. And so these are each just a string, just text that is in this field, and it limits our choices. So we can't just type any text we want. We must choose of one of these three. And then we saw the multiple select, so you can choose any number of those set strings for you. We also have the date, which we talked about previously, is just multiple integers kind of stacked together. So the day of the month, the number of the month itself, the number that represents the year, with the full name, which is multiple strings slapped together. The email is just text, string. Phone is actually just a string, right? So all of these, like the further we go down, these are all just specialized versions of this primitive type. And they are more complex data structures that tie together multiple primitives to create this fully functional field. And it's just awesome to use SmartSuite, and they have so many fields at your disposal. You have percent complete, you have status, you have a due date, you got dependency, right? So each of these specialized fields takes those primitives, combines them in a unique way, and then makes them available to you so that you can immediately put that field into practice. Duration, great example of either an integer or a float, however you want to look at it. Checklist, multiple checkboxes, booleans in a row, right? Rating, a number. I guess this is technically a float, right? 3.7 stars. You can vote. You got social networks, so these are just strings. So I can keep going, but that is these primitives: integer, boolean, float, and string, inside of SmartSuite, and their specific application inside of SmartSuite. So that is how we build apps. And we're going to, as you build your apps, I'm just returning to the why here. The reason I wanted to start with the data is because you need to understand how to create a place to capture and store your data. And I say this because, as I see it, 80% of your application is going to be determining how to capture and store your data, how to structure it so that it can be easily presented to the user. Just a quick example of this is if I click on new record, right now, let me make my bubble a little bit smaller so you can see it. But right now we have the title, we have a description. These are both strings, they're both text. One's just got a bigger box than the other. Then we have this number, we've got married, and we have single select, right? And so this form is essentially set up to capture all of the information I might need from an individual. And I'm going to need to create all of the fields and add them into this form so that I can capture all the necessary information. And if I don't have all those fields, and if I don't know what data type it is, what it's supposed to be, then I'm not going to capture the right information. And it'll take me longer to actually create this form, more iterations. I think one of the biggest mistakes you could possibly make, for example, is needing or wanting a number, but creating a text field to collect that number. Because you might say, hey, like, a text field can collect pretty much anything you want, but it won't have the same structure as the number, or the percent, or the currency, or the yes, no. And so knowing how to structure your information, how it is structured, knowing these primitives, and how they apply in SmartSuite specifically, helps you move far, far faster as a developer than if you did not know what those primitives were. And this will become much more apparent as we dive into Flutterflow. So, thank you so much for joining today, aspiring developer. I hope this was useful, powerful, and that you now understand how these primitives map into the NoCode software of SmartSuite.